and travel for pleasure and business are kind of all intertwined, I think, for most of us.
So we want those people contributing, certainly the photography, but the writing is so important that people understand, the person who's there understands what it's like to be on the ground. Existed in other places, but people would, take a chance on you here, and they would, I guess there was a sort of maybe a lack of a certain risk appetite here, which was attractive for me.
And I think they've trusted us, and I think we've kind of proved our mettle, and so I feel like we're also kind of custodians of it now, moving it into like the next decade, and that's really very encouraging and optimistic as well. So
and when people travel there as well, I guess we're also trying to promote a certain way of experiencing a place. We don't want people to come and see. We want people to come and engage and spend time there and build relationships, and we that depth is really important, because I think it incentivizes the right kind of development.
Serve a need that people have, a deep need for something that's slow, that's considered, that is trustworthy, that they can rely on, that there's discerning editorship. Is for art weeks and design and calendar events in Indonesia, Japan, Singapore, Taiwan, also BODW and Design Month in December here in Hong Kong. There's definitely some other things I'm missing, but you'll have to just get the issue to find out the rest.
And the rest, I wanted to say it on air. The latest renovation of the podcast, the reason why we stayed silent for a month was because of you. Because when I reached out, and I don't remember, forgive me my memory, but I don't know if it was Jeremy or Simone. I said, I would love to have you, and you replied logically, which one of us? Or both of us. And I said, come, both of you, of course. And I did, and at the time I didn't have the capability to talk with more than one person.
I see.
So I knew that I had to make this leap eventually, but I said, I might as well do it. I'm not gonna say no. So let them come together. So we changed the audio. We added this camera that is pointing to Jeremy. And now we feel very happy, and because we changed the audio, we had to change the table, and then we changed the interface, and now David and I are having a lot of fun recording this.
We better make it worth the effort then.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
We deliver something of value.
We did use it yesterday because this is setting B. Setting B is to talk with two people. Setting A is we place your camera. Yes, that camera that we are still figuring out.
I see.
We played up there. So we can actually show art pieces, drawings, pictures from projects, art books, and so on. So it becomes a podcast in which you can present people, and in which designers and artists and any creative can actually showcase what they do. So thank you. If it wasn't because of you, we would still be in the ice age.
Our pleasure.
So, without further ado, Jeremy and Simone. Jeremy Smart, that's a fantastic last name, and Simone Schultz. Welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited to have you here.
Thank you.
You are co-editors, newly enthroned co-editors of Design Anthology, which is the only publication I buy.
Wow.
It's true. Actually, no. I bought a competitor 2 days ago in Milano Malpensa, but that was a casual acquisition. I'm a big fan because, as I was mentioning to Jeremy, when we were, let's say, prepping about to enter the room, I think the decisions, the strategic decisions of the magazine, of making it something that is not meant to be thrown away. At least I interpreted it as something that is collectible, that is meant to be placed on your shelves for a very long time. I tell my companies, my marketing departments, that we should invest money in your magazine because people are going to be seeing that advertisement for many, many, many years. Maybe I should get some consulting fees as well.
You should tell your marketing department.
I know. I do tell them, but marketing people are very stingy most of the time. So yes, I was a fan, and now that understood that we were a little bit polished, I said, let me reach out and meet them. So thank you for coming all the way here. You don't live in Hong Kong, do you?
I mostly live in Hong Kong.
You live here?
I mostly do, yeah. I am in and out quite a bit, but I've been here almost 8 years, actually. So I'm, in and out now, more frequently traveling back and forth. But yeah, still based in Hong Kong for the most part.
All right.
I'm in Tokyo, so I mean, Hong Kong is still a kind of home. I guess we're all linked to the city in some way, but Tokyo is my day-to-day life.
When did you decide to go to Tokyo?
2022. Well, I mean, the decision is, it was a very long process given the pandemic, but I moved in 2022. So I was here for about 5 years up until then.
All right. And how is living there? Sorry.
Good. I have very few complaints. It's a very comfortable place to live, very functional place to live.
I love Tokyo. I travel for work all the time, and I must say that trips are not super exciting anymore because I normally do them for commercial reasons. But Japan in general, Tokyo in particular, is one of those places that I always go happily. But at the same time, I think, is it going to be easy? Would it be easy living here as a foreigner? So what do you think?
I think in some ways it's maybe easier to live there than visit. I think it can be... There's a lot of things that are very different. I think Japan functions in a different way to a lot of other countries. I mean, you know, if you've been there, you know that. So I think once you kind of get up to speed with how things work, it's very predictable. Things happen the way you expect them to happen. So once you understand how they work, you know, life becomes... I don't want to say predictable, but certainly the way the city and the way the country functions is rather predictable, and that's quite nice in a way.
Oh,
so,
it's very nice.
Yeah, living there is easier. Whereas when you're visiting, you know, you're kind of, I don't know, you're sort of having to adapt to the place. You're having to learn how things function, and even if you're there regularly, you know, things are just different. You know,
I get what you mean. When for example, let's talk about the opposite. If you go to Jakarta, that's the opposite of predictable. Like you go there, you know how customs, how long you're gonna spend, you know how the traffic jam is gonna be, and there is a lot of uncertainty and then you cannot plan your life because you need to allocate a certain period of the day to just figure it out. And then that's when I realized I was becoming old, because I realized I was enjoying more going to Singapore than going to Jakarta.
That's when you know.
That's when you know. because you go to Singapore and you know, I jumped into the taxi literally 22 minutes before touching down. And I knew I was going to be in my hotel in exactly more or less half an hour. And I'm like, this is nice. And you know, in Singapore, kind of like the cars move slowly, nice, at the same speed in the highway and everything. And it's like, okay, predictability is a good thing. Simone, you said you go in and out. Do you travel for the magazine or you travel because you have two homes?
A bit of both, actually. I mean, I think at this stage, work and life and travel for pleasure and business are kind of all intertwined, I think, for most of us. I do have two homes. I'm from Cape Town originally, and now I'm lucky enough to spend more time there as well. But I mean, we're on the road probably once every month at least, back and forth. Jeremy and I being in different cities, we're lucky enough to come together, you know, around about that same frequency. Okay. And so when we're in town together, we really maximize that time. It means we're really productive together. We get to sort of energize each other. It's very inspiring. But yeah, we get to travel a lot for the magazine as well. And mainly we kind of follow the design and cultural calendar around the region. So we sort of try to be wherever a key moment is happening. And then, of course, we tack things onto that. So, you know, whether we're in Indonesia or in Bali for a design festival, and then we'll be in Jakarta for something else that's happening, you know. So we kind of get to be quite strategic with our travel, and then making sure to tack on a few nice stays at somewhere nice on either side of that to recoup.
I mean, yeah, I have a series on my Instagram. Sorry for the self publicity, in which I call it Hotel Windows. I tend to take the glamour off of my life, because some my friends back in Spain, they think I live a glamorous life, and so I take those pictures in which I see you see the back of the buildings, all the AC installments. And then I look at your magazine and I see this, you know, amazing hotel in Tibet or in the middle of the jungle. And what I think is there is someone doing that trip and taking those pictures and spending some time in there. So is it you guys or do you work with collaborators in those places?
Very rarely is it us taking photos and
yeah.
writing, certainly. But I mean, we obviously spend a lot of nights in hotels, so inevitably we have those experiences as well.
Yeah, we get to see very beautiful places. I must say, I think I'm ruined now. I don't know how we'll ever travel otherwise. But we are lucky enough to have a really wide and varied network of writers and photographers who produce those stories for us, and for them it's work, right? We see them,
completely.
on the mountains of Mongolia, but that's a job for them as well. And we're just really lucky to have a very talented community that we work with, and then of course also, less frequently now, but we do write when we can. That's probably a really enjoyable part of the job, but as with anything, the things you enjoy, you sort of start to do less of down the line, as you sort of start to take on more. I think
leaning on the local expertise as well. Like there's a reason. It's not that we don't necessarily have the time or don't want to be out there doing these things ourselves. It's that we trust the people who are out in the field and who spend their time in these places. So we want those people contributing, certainly the photography, but the writing is so important that people understand, the person who's there understands what it's like to be on the ground. So, it's very intentional and strategic that we work with that pool of contributors.
It makes sense. Let me go back a little bit because I want to make this episode a little bit chronological. You guys are extremely young. Sorry, especially him, or at least you look very young.
I try.
I think I'm insulted.
I really try. Yeah, you should be.
No. Okay. Yes, I should shut up. I just broke my number one rule, which is not to talk about age. But I meant it as a compliment for both of you. And then when you reach out to editors of a magazine of this prestige, you expect people in their 50s, and then you come here so young, so vibrant. How did you get here? What was the journey to get to this position?
I'm actually 60. It's a special pill I take, so...
Then you need to share it with me.
I will.
I'll pay you a commission.
Will after this. How did we get here? I suppose we're probably younger. I think I'm older than I look. But I think we're probably younger than our peers, maybe. I guess it's also where we are in the world. I think, the magazine being, coming from Hong Kong, this city, it was probably the thing that attracted me to Hong Kong. It was a place where you could come and punch above your weight. You could, find opportunities that, maybe existed in other places, but people would, take a chance on you here, and they would, I guess there was a sort of maybe a lack of a certain risk appetite here, which was attractive for me. But I think it also allowed us to do things that we might not otherwise do in other markets. And I grew up in Australia where you sort of, in a lot of ways, it's very, in a lot of ways parochial. It's kind of, I think in a lot of places there's that kind of establishment that's hard to crack if you're not, if you didn't grow up around it or in it. And Hong Kong absolutely has that as well. So I don't pretend it doesn't exist here, but I think it's sometimes the power of just being an outsider and arriving somewhere and, making things for yourself, you're sort of, emboldened and empowered a little bit in a way that you just aren't in the place where you grew up. So, I guess that's certainly for me how I ended up here in a very sort of abstract sense.
No.
I can give you the more practical version,
but I can relate to that. Let's say if even though I'm Spanish, I normally work for Italian companies. I've been working for them for the last 12 years. And if you work at the age of certain roles, bosses are not bosses until they get to 55. And then when you move away, then you get the chance to arrive faster because, opportunities open up, and Hong Kong is very dynamic. Maybe a little bit less dynamic now, but let's say nevertheless, it's still there is a lot of motion.
I think certainly that it was a bit of a case of also being in the right place at the right time, and quite a unique mix of elements that have. I don't think that either of our career trajectories are kind of obvious or common. You're right that probably we are a fair bit younger than, as you said, other editors-in-chief of our age. But Design Anthology celebrated its 10-year anniversary last year. So the magazine itself is also, there's a lot behind it, but it's still fairly young in magazine terms, I suppose, as a brand. But I also think it's credit to, the founders and publishers of DA that, we really stand on their shoulders. And when Jeremy and I started, there was a lot of freedom to kind of have ideas and run with it. And I think they've trusted us. And I think we've kind of proved our mettle. And so, I feel like we're also kind of custodians of it now, moving it into like the next decade. Yeah. And there's a sense of just, I've been there 6.5 or almost 7 of those years. And I think you even more than that. And so we've kind of been there for a lot of it. I think this is just a kind of natural next step and evolution of it.
It feels very weird that the magazine is only 10 years old, because the feeling that the brand, the perception of the magazine is that of a legacy publication. And how did the magazine achieve this? And I think many people would say the same, would sign the same statement.
Good question. I guess part of it's just surviving. Media is a tough market, so you have to just stay afloat and keep things going, and you have to kind of adapt. You have to, keep an eye on where things are going and try to, skate to where the puck is going and make sure you're sort of preempting the market a little bit. I think that's been a big part of it. When we were based here, I think it was also about, or perhaps it was about decentralizing, working in as many markets, really as we could, because it allowed us to kind of weather certain economic storms that, inevitably, it's not uncommon and we see it now. And so just spending time in lots of different places so that, when one economy isn't necessarily in the best state, we can kind of shift our energy somewhere else. And then hopefully when that other place that we love, the budgets start to come back, we, follow them. We like to go back and, service that in a commercial sense as well. That's separate to our editorial approach, which of course we remain very focused on, underrepresented economies, underrepresented designers, so that kind of doesn't waver. We certainly don't, allow our editorial approach to follow the economic health of places. But from a financial perspective, which, I guess is what you're asking about in terms of how we got here and how we got to 10 years. I mean, it was really about, I guess, adaptability. I think it was about following things as they shifted.
But absolutely. And I think that in the very beginning, Design Anthology wasn't founded as a golden ticket. It was founded because there was a real need for it. And I think that, it was born of a desire and a sort of impetus to showcase what's happening in the region, because no one was doing that. And I think from the early stages that, we were talking about this earlier, that was identified. Like there was integrity behind it. And I think that's what gained a lot of respect in the early days. I think that people were like this is the real deal, someone's doing something, someone's taking a punt, someone's betting on what's happening in APAC that, hadn't been done, that kind of interest, that kind of commitment and dedication. And I think that's also really something that's added to that sense of legacy that you're talking about.
Yes.
And perhaps that space still exists as well. Again, like how we got to 10 years, it also, other players haven't necessarily joined us in this space. I think there's a lot of room for other people to come in and tell the huge amount of stories from this part of the world obviously in design and the creative industries, but across the board. And to this day, I don't see other players entering the space. So I still see opportunity in it. And I guess there's also that kind of, exactly what you said, it's about a sort of a deeper purpose, that it's Absolutely. Like at the end of the day, you sort of, you make the money to make a magazine rather than making a magazine to make the money. And I think that shifts the way you approach things on a day-to-day level.
100%. I'm very surprised that you are, again, what you said, there is not a clear competition, because when you buy other publications, you feel like you're buying advertisement. And then with yours, there is a sense of, there is a clear editorial approach. There is a clear philosophy behind the publication. There is this, what they call in Italian, the fil rouge, the common denominator between every issue. And I want to lean on this before getting to another topic, because you mentioned the editorial approach, the talking, let's say, representing the underrepresented. For people, for the few listeners or let's say viewers that don't know your magazine, how do you like to define this editorial approach?
I think one thing that kind of guides a lot of my thinking, and certainly I think our thinking, is stories that kind of mirror the magazine itself, right? The way we make Design Anthology. So is this timeless? Will it stand the test of time? Does it have a perspective? Will it still be relevant? Is there a meaning to this beyond this very surface level thing? And so I think we like to look at a story from a Design Anthology angle, sort of like that. I think, as Jeremy said, we like to give space to sort of the historically underrepresented. We like to kind of where there's a cross-disciplinary approach. So whether it's an architect working in hospitality now, or the home of a photographer, or an artist who is a trained whatever else. So there's that where there's a bit of a crossover, because I think DA isn't a straightforward design or architecture or travel publication or brand, indeed, actually at this stage. It's kind of sits at the intersection of all of those disciplines, and that's also what makes it kind of unique and cuts across quite a wide audience basis, because we're as relevant to designers and architects as we are to somebody who's interested in architecture and loves to travel the world. And so we kind of cut across that quite well.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I think when we get questions from you get it from marketing teams, they'll often ask, is it a trade audience, is it a consumer audience, what's the split? And we kind of don't have that. We certainly don't have a distinction in our own minds, because it's all one group of people, the kinds of people who work in this industry. They're also consumers. They're also on a plane. They're also staying in these hotels. They're also, buying these things for their homes and for their wardrobes and for their lives. So, we don't really, it is a very holistic approach. And perhaps increasingly so. Maybe that's if, we're talking about the future and the way we, are sort of shifting and shaping it. I think that's the thing that I guess I would like to see. I think we would probably both like to see more of, is where it all comes together. And I think that, cross-disciplinary, and then, of course, the kind of geographic bridging that goes on as well, trying not to put things in there, isolate things.
Yep. I do confess that I use Design Anthology to explain sometimes what I want to do with this podcast. We are different. You have a more, I don't know if solemn or let's say serious or let's say well put is the tone of your magazine. This podcast is a little bit more informal, especially when we record on a Friday afternoon and we actually drink the beers. But the reach in terms of guests, in terms of topics, is kind of the same. Is let's say yes, design, but also photography and retail, even the business side of retail. I'm very interested in actually how things work. And I get very excited when things come together, when there are collaborations, when an interior designer collaborates with a manufacturer, or when a clearly Thai-influenced Bill Bensley goes and does something in Mongolia, for example. No, so look, kudos to you guys. I love it. Keep on doing the same.
Thank you. Very kind.
Thank you.
How was it easy? Was it natural to take on the role of Suthi Anetta, that, as we were mentioning before, is an interior designer, and carrying on with that view? How was the handover? How did this, let's say, new era came to be?
I mean, we're tiny. We're a tiny team, so I think there's, I couldn't say there was a handover as much as it's been. I think it's been a collaboration for a very long time. Like, we all have quite different skills, very complementary skills, and even today we just work very closely together. And so, I would say it's been a bit of a transition. I think that we're, and she, today we still work very closely together. She does She's a great support to us as well. She gives us a lot of the, certainly gives us a lot of space, and, is very respectful of our roles. But yeah, she's also just a very good support in terms of, giving us advice about where things, I think, so we talk about institutional memory. Obviously we've been with the magazine for the majority of its life, but those early years are so critical and you learn a lot. And, it was also never our risk, it was never we never founded it. And the founding is the bit where you put everything on the line. So I suppose there's that, in a sense, it's a luxury to come along early enough that you get to sort of feel like you're a part of shaping something, but not so early that, you had to put things on the line for it. So I have a lot of respect for Susie and Phil who founded it, because it's, that's really the hard part. And then, of course, establishing it, becomes a whole separate thing. And I guess, for us to come along at this point in its life, I guess it's, I think we're able to kind of, I don't know, I guess like it's sort of, because it's in a new chapter of its life, we get to kind of shepherd it through that chapter rather than kind of shepherding it through chapter one. Does that make sense? It's like
no, totally, 100%.
Yeah, I think it was it's more of a natural evolution. Sorry, and I think, as you said, what we're doing now, we've been doing in some capacity up, in some way for a few years, and now we're here and it's sort of more formalized, and that sort of means we get to shape the vision and we have a bit more of a sense, certainly more of a sense of agency around it. But also Jeremy and I, we've been working closely like this, collaborating since the very beginning. Like we started off getting to know each other over in a villa in Indonesia where we were launching a magazine, and then now we're here sitting like this, and it just feels like the most natural thing in the world. And so I think you actually can't understate the significance of having partners. Like it's always been a collaboration, and it's felt quite flat in that way, sort of structurally, and that opens up a lot of space to take risks, to be inspired. And yeah, I just think we are lucky that now we can kind of just have an idea and be like, should we do this? And okay. And then, you have a podcast or an awards program or a trip to Japan next month that's happening. So yeah, I think, we're very lucky for that as well.
It's a bit like you just find the right people, and you can't plan for it and you can't go looking for it. I think when you end up working with people who you really resonate and connect with, like it's a pretty special thing. And I suppose we found that, I think, with Susie and the broader team as well.
I think it's very respectable that you understate what you're doing, and you speak about it as being something very natural. But from the outside, I think it's especially, how to say, it's admirable when these connections happen seamlessly and without any friction. I mean, frictions that are everywhere. I love my wife for all my life, and still sometimes you disagree. But when for you it's a given that this type of, let's say, again, seamless, this continuous transition, for you is normal, but however, it's extraordinary. Allow me to ask you about the intricacies of your work, because it feels very easy when you flip through these pages and everything kind of like connects. But I guess it takes a lot of work and a lot of planning and a lot of and a lot of skill and craft. Could you walk me through a little bit what it takes for you to every 3 months to produce one of these issues? By the way, this is the latest one. Eh?
Thankfully, we're every 6 months now. So
it's 6 months.
We're twice a year, so we have a little bit more time, which makes.
But you were doing it before every 3 months.
We were doing it 4 times a year. Yes, but I think in 2023 we went down to 2 a year, so biannual, which was kind of a practical decision given the cost of producing a magazine of that quality, but also because we wanted to focus on other avenues, other kind of extensions of Design Anthology. Of course, the print magazine is sort of the structural and philosophical heart of it, but there's also just space for other iterations, other experiences around it. So whether that's, more events, which we've been focusing on, or our digital platforms, or our monthly dispatch, which so we're kind of just focusing on looking at broader ways of telling stories that kind of are different manifestations of the magazine.
I guess we also see the print magazine as it's a product in and of itself. It's obviously it's a channel and a vehicle to tell stories, but it's also a physical product. And I guess giving people a product that just has a longer lifespan, it increases its value, increases the way you think about it. It doesn't, we wanted it to be more timeless. I think we wanted it to be something that you collect and you love and you care for. I guess a bit more bookish in that sense. So I think going down to 2 a year helped us do that as well. It helped us become a little less timely, intentionally less timely. And then, of course, our other platforms allow us to, sort of add that element back. So, the email is our most frequent. We do that monthly, and that allows us to run, more timely, pacier stories that are maybe the story's shelf life is maybe shorter, and we really want people to know about a new opening or something that is not necessarily going to be around forever. But we want to get it out there and tell the story. Whereas in the magazine, and certainly when we're commissioning now, we're having a lot of conversations about will this work in 6 months or 12 months or 10 years, because that's when that's how long people keep these magazines for, which is great. So we're very conscious of, I think, pacing and timeliness, and that's when you ask about putting it together, that's become, that really becomes one of the big questions you ask.
We'll get pictures in daily, and the question, it is like, is this a weekly story? Is this a monthly story? Is this something that would be relevant for print? And that's kind of how we start to distill it.
So people reach out to you?
Sometimes.
Or you reach out to people?
Both. Really
Okay.
both. Often we'll get pictures from contributors, writers, photographers. The designers themselves will reach out to us. Our inboxes are always open. And then, or we'll see things on the road that will spark an idea or a story, or somebody will show us a project over coffee on their phone, that will pique our interest. So it's really very varied.
It's quite personal as well. I mean, as you say, like a lot of great stories, probably the best stuff, comes from serendipitous conversations. And if you didn't happen to be traveling that week, you didn't happen to be in Jakarta sitting down with that person, you just wouldn't have known about it. People are busy, and a lot of studios doing great work. They're small. They don't have PR colleagues. They don't have people who can help them get the story out there. So sometimes when you're sitting down with the founder, they go, "Oh, we just did this project. Like, are you interested in it?" And you're like, "Yes, of course. Why haven't you sent this to us?" So, I think it's the power of personal relationships as well. I mean, that's runs so deep into what we do. It's very personal. Everything touches us on a human level as well.
Okay. So this is very interesting. So because now this is you have a predetermined structure on how the magazine is going to work. Is it something that like an Excel file? Terrible metaphor. Like a sort of like a shelf that you need to put things in holes, and then it's like a collage that then you put together. How long does it take you to decide on, okay, when do you know the magazine is going to be ready? Many questions in one. You unpack them as you want.
We are very process driven. I think because we're a small team, we rely very heavily on sort of safeguarding processes. So we are very strict with timelines. We stick to deadlines. We work very nimbly together. So we'll work backwards. And if we know that the magazine has to be on shelves in X date, we work backwards. I mean, we've done this. This is issue 40 that we're working on now. So we've done it, so many times. And then we work backwards. Yeah. And we know that, we have certain predetermined sections. We have partnerships where we're working with brands or advertisers to produce bespoke content. We need to factor those into the timelines if we're talking about just the print issue. And then we work backwards from there, and we send out deadlines and we wrangle everyone a lot. And then,
But there is a mega spreadsheet. Yes.
Yeah. We have an incredible program that we use called Airtable, which is like our colleague at this stage.
I didn't want to compare this so nice, so artistic, so nice to the touch with an Excel file, but I also use them as well. So nothing to say about this. I'm going to ask you a very difficult question because you work with a lot of designers, but I want you to put skin in the game and in this conversation. I want you to tell me to talk to me about some projects, some designers that were really special when you made the article, when you covered them, because of maybe a small detail. They don't have to be because their status or something. Can you share with me and with the audience some special that were very maybe meaningful to you? Maybe one of you got married the day God proposed the day you were writing the article, or something like this.
Oh, it's a tough question to ask us.
I know,
It's like picking a favorite child.
Yeah, to
There
name,
are always
name
favorite
people.
childs, by the way.
Recently we worked on a book for an Indonesian architect, Ondra Martin, and I think, if you speak about someone like that, that's someone on a personal level. He produces work that resonates with me. But I think it's also, that's someone who is working at this top level in Indonesia, and he's so revered, so respected, and often outside of the country, people might not necessarily know him, even if they've seen his work. And, working to tell a story or the story of his career, we did a large format coffee table book with Thames and Hudson on his work and his homes in particular. And so something like that, I think, is, that it sits quite deeply within our sort of personal interests. I mean, I think from a architectural perspective, his work is interesting. It reminds me a lot of Australia in the sense that there's inside and outside coming together. There's a lot of, that boundary is quite blurry. There's a lot of outdoor living. It's very Indonesian, but I think he sort of exemplifies that. So, someone like that is, I think, is safe to say. I would be very hesitant to say other names because there's a lot. There's,
So we were in Bali for the book launch of the book that Jeremy is talking about, and we were also there because we were running a talks program as part of a design festival that was happening in Bali called Geo-Curated Kiosks. And the location was incredible. It was an abandoned theme park that had been abandoned since the 90s and is now like Angkor Wat meets Jumanji. Incredible. And we ran this talks program there. And the conversation pit was outside. It was among the vines and like crumbling graffiti covered walls. The dappled sun was coming in. We were sitting having these conversations, had a fireside chat with Japanese architect Keiji Ashizawa. We were sitting there and it was just like, this is a bit of a pinch me moment. Like, this is our job, that we get to sit and talk to these people in places like this. Like this is what we do for work. And that was a bit of a moment where I was like, oh, this is incredible. This is memorable for me because it just is special. And this is an unusual a whole set of circumstances. So, while we can't pick necessarily a favorite recent project or story, I think there's moments like that where you're just like, this is why we do this, bringing people together, telling stories and spaces that are memorable and emotive and evoke these feelings like that. This is cool.
Where is that?
Really quite meaningful.
Where is that place that you're describing in Bali?
In Bali, it's in on the east coast, Seminyak.
Sanur.
Sorry. Yeah, Sanur.
We'll be back August this year, so please join us.
Yeah, it's called Bali Festival Park.
Bali Festival Park.
Yeah.
I want to check it out. Let me get off topic a little bit because you mentioned Bali, and Bali is, let's say, I think is present in many of your issues because it has this amazing characteristic that Australia also has, this sort of nature coming into the home, and it has a different air, it has a different sound, even the smell in Bali is different. It's one of those islands that is magical. I know two on Earth, maybe there are more, but for me, when you land in Bali, it is the same that when you land in Ibiza. You feel that there is a magnetism that is different from other places. Like Ibiza is different from Saint-Tropez. It's more special, not because the restaurants are better, because they are the same, or because the clubs are, maybe bigger, but anyway, or because the people are better looking, because they are very good looking in both places. But the vibe is different. Maybe I'm a little bit metaphysical. Please allow me to be, but Bali is also like this. And I am a little bit heartbroken because I see where Bali is heading. Do you think, how do you see this, and do you think this is something that can be fixed?
In Bali specifically?
Yes, because every time I go to Bali, 2012, I traveled in Bali for 1 month by myself. I remember I stayed in Canggu on a surfer's dorm. I don't know if you are familiar with the big clubs. There is a club now called Atlas, which is a huge megalodontic type of structure. Before there were rice fields 12 years ago. There was just literally nothing. Every time I go to Bali, I need to go a little bit either to Uluwatu or a little bit farther north. Every year I say, okay, this year I'm escaping from Canggu, I go to Pererenan. And then next year I come back to Pererenan, and then Canggu ate Pererenan. It's like, when is this going to stop? How do you see the island evolving?
I mean, I suppose from our perspective, we are always, because, you know, naturally I'm an Australian, my people have contributed to a lot of the problems you're talking about, so I accept some responsibility. I think there's also, you know, for us and the projects that we do and the events specifically that we run there, you know, we're talking to people and engaging with people who are invested in the place on a very deep, sometimes spiritual, sometimes, you know, multiple generations. There's a locality, a closeness to the place that I think is really important to honor and to explore and to tell those stories rather than, or as much as you can. And I guess also, you know, because so often the creative industries can either be a source of you know, it can be overdevelopment, it can be oversaturation and overproduction. I think that's, you know, one of the biggest issues. But I think in Bali, you know, what you get is a kind of, and it's not unique to Bali anymore. I live in Tokyo. I see a lot of it happening in Japan. I see it certainly in Kyoto. But I guess, it kind of becomes this sort of like a sort of Disney-fied veneer of the place. And you get, you know, you see these references, you see that there's like someone's trying to kind of, you know, show that they understand the place and they're trying to connect with it in terms of what they've produced. But at the end of the day, it's a kind of big commercial veneer. And when we're working there, I mean, I can't really speak for anyone else, but I think when we're working there, it's, you know, important that we focus on that. And I think for JCK, the event that we partner on for the talks, I mean, that's, I guess, a big part of their philosophy as well. So I think it's just also about working with people who share these values and want to protect what exists. And, you know, like, why build something new if you already have something of value? Celebrate that.
And to that end, I think a lot is being done on Bali that's really an exemplar for the rest of the world and really quite inspirational. I mean, Indonesia is the second biggest producer of plastic waste after China, but you know, there's organizations like Potato Head or Sungai Watch or Eco Mantra that are doing a lot to really reverse that on the island. And there's people, as you said, they're invested, and you know, they're going. I mean, Potato Head's really the leader in that. But then Sungai Watch is deploying people to collect the rubbish and plastic out of the rivers and really unblocking entire rivers. And or you know, there's Eco Mantra who's consulting with new properties on more meaningful sustainable measures. So, you know, I think while the rate of development is certainly problematic, there are also things being done on that systematic level by independent organizations that's really modeling, I think, what a lot of the rest of the world should be doing. So there's a lot that's happening that's really very encouraging and optimistic as well. So, yeah. And
when people travel there as well, I guess we're also trying to promote a certain way of experiencing a place. We don't want people to come and, you know, see. We want people to come and engage and spend time there and build relationships. And we, you know, that depth is really important because I think it incentivizes the right kind of development.
No, look, thank you for the optimism. And in fact, I was thinking I would love to talk with some of those people from Potato Head, because I think it would be a very nice conversation. I've been to Bali when I went in 2012. I spent a month because I thought I was never going to go back. You know, I was a guy from Spain studying in China. What did I know? That I was going to come back 15 times. And I am passionate about the place. I like it. It breaks my heart. But if there is any optimism that I can grab onto and maybe I can even contribute, I would be super happy to do so. You know, Yes.
I was just about to say, I think it's also a slow travel thing. You know, like when we do go to Bali, where are we going? Where are we spending our money? What are we doing?
Yes.
That really is still like respecting and valuing and not, you know, if we think that there's overconsumption or over tourism, you know, being conscious, not to sort of contribute to those issues and just being just being better travelers as well, you know. And
I think we need to try to. I hate the verb preach, but maybe we just need to lead with example. The reason why I was so bitter is because I wanted to take my daughter to see the monkeys in the Ubud forest. So, you know, we get a driver, they take us there. We were staying back in close to Pererenan, and, you know, on the way, obviously the guy was paid by different places to stop and have us consume or something. So, you know, they make a stop at this place in which people take pictures on the swings. Have you seen that place? There is a whole structure that is meant only for people to take Instagram pictures. I'm sure you've seen some of them. You know, they rent these long dresses and they get on the swing and they go back and forth with a harness, which is very weird. And then, you know, they have this tail moving back and forth. And you know, I was looking at my wife, and one of the reasons why I love my wife and I know I'm going to stay with her for the rest of my life is that we think the same in this type. We have the same principles. We're looking at each other like, we're not going to take the picture. We're not going to fucking take the picture. So yeah, that's the reason why I was a little bitter, because you realize that people are treating the place as I don't know, as a tissue that you use and you throw into the bin.
But that's not unique to Bali at all. I mean, that's just probably travel in the age of social media to some degree, you know?
Yeah, and low airfares, low cost carriers, it's just accessible. So you just get large numbers of people, and places have to handle large numbers of people. Like, it's a kind of structural economic problem, isn't it?
It's all part of a system. I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing that people, I mean, tourism, you know, it's not a bad thing. It's not a blight. No. I don't think. But
sorry, Bali, I didn't want to.
Responsible and good people in general.
Exactly.
Yes, I want to, let's say, expressly say that I have nothing against Bali, especially. It's only love. Maybe I spend more time there, so I see all the problems more. And again, if I can use this podcast, I would be super happy. You guys are also doing podcasts. I mean, we've talked about the magazine. It's great. You have also a great newsletter. And again, David, I promise, I am not so complimentary with everyone. But you are probably... I read 2 newsletters. One is yours and the other one is a competitor. And out of elegance, and I'm not going to name their names, so you can share this episode with your network. It's very well written. I love it. And then the third leg that I know of your activity is the podcast. It was a big inspiration. Design Talks. I would have loved to have that name, so thank you for stealing that. But how is that going? Let's say, how do you see? You have much more experience than I do. You've spoken with most of the big names in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of it was during, I think we started before the pandemic, during. I think you know, so we did it in seasons. We would always try to kind of, you know, make a holistic, you know, series of episodes to try to like release, certainly for the consistency for the audience, to make sure that we were putting out something every week. But, you know, inevitably, given the size of our team and the scale of that, in a logistics and production sense, you know, you can't sustain that every single week indefinitely. So what we did was, you know, batch things into seasons. And so we did, I think, 4 or 5 seasons, and we just haven't picked up another season since. But it's not something that we, you know, it's obviously something we love. It's a medium, I mean, much like this, it's a medium that lets you tell stories you can't otherwise, and it's intimate. You know, it's a way to communicate with the audience that is kind of unrivaled. So it's something I'd like to do more of. I think we talk about ideas, we talk about how we might want to either, you know, bring back the design dialogues or launch another podcast. So yeah, it's something we talk about. We're just we, like I said, we are small in terms of our team, but it does make us quite decisive about what we work on. So we want to make sure we do things really well. We don't want to go into something that we can't make perfect or as perfect as we possibly can.
I think it was still people now talk about how much they enjoyed listening to the design dialogues, and credit to Susie and Jeremy, because it just really was quite self-sustaining. And I think just speaks to the great network that Design Anthology has built over the years, that there are people just willing to, as you said, a lot of great people, really interesting household names, some of them that just gave their time generously. And I hope we get to do more of that.
You being media experts, I want to pick your brain on something. Now, I am very committed to this project, and I will do it forever and ever because I just enjoy doing it. Even if I just throw money down the bin for a very long time, I don't care. But so I'm not super concerned about, let's say, making this a way of living, and therefore I don't feel the pressure of making it super fast, super big. But it is ever more difficult because now there are a lot of publications. Now, again, as media experts, do you think there will eventually come to be a concentration of publications, or will we continue to have millions of very small micro nano publications? Will eventually people give up and be tired and just consume big names, or will this be a trend that will stay? $1 million.
That is a very good question. I think that there's a lot of skepticism around mainstream media at the moment. So I think long live the indie publication, or long live the sort of independent editorial team. I think there's always an appetite for it. I think that there's a reason that magazines like DA have stood the test of time, because they serve a need that people have, a deep need for something that's slow, that's considered, that is trustworthy, that they can rely on, that there's discerning editorship. I
mean, just in terms of like the way we treat the magazine, it's not, I think we're in a space where there's a lot of, our, I guess what you might call a media brand now that we're competing for audience with, they don't necessarily have the same rigor. We approach it as, in a journalistic sense, like we fact check and we copy edit and we have processes that I don't think exist in a lot of organizations now. I mean, I know they don't. I know that that's something that, when they're small indie publications, they're expensive. Fact checking and editing is a really expensive skill to have. And so I suppose that's something that we really lean on, I guess, is making sure that we maintain that rigor.
It's the processes. Yeah. It's the process. But also,
and our audience trusts us because of that.
And I think it's also the value of, or I suppose in that lies the value for some of our partners. We have great partnerships that have allowed us to do a lot of the things we do. We partner with brands and advertisers. And for them, that's also, our point of difference is all of the things we've just mentioned, and I think that will continue to be attractive for partners down the line, that there is all of the things that make DA, you can't replicate that necessarily.
But I think in terms of, like, you asked for a crystal ball answer, I think
we're all skirting the subject.
I think there's a lot of, you didn't want to name a competitor. I don't, it benefits everyone when there are more players, when there's a healthy competition and a healthy ecosystem, particularly in print, because making a magazine and distributing it and making sure that people actually get hold of it relies on so many people in the middle. And the more peers we have, the more money there is flowing through the system and propping up a lot of the infrastructure that makes it possible. And so I think something that we've seen is a lot of indie magazines have emerged, but a lot of legacy titles have not, or they've reduced frequency, or they've reduced size. And that's meant that the ecosystem has suffered. And so, I think on a personal level, and as a media consumer, I want to see healthy competition. I want to see media brands that do things properly. I don't want to just consume, first person TikTok videos. I want to see processes and things done properly.
Absolutely.
And I want to trust I want to trust it. I think that's what it comes down to. And I can't trust it if I don't trust the brand and I don't trust that they're following a process that has integrity.
Yeah, exactly. We want to be a part of a robust ecosystem.
Yeah.
Where everyone is kind of
Yeah.
contributing and is a part of it.
Yeah. Because lack of trust in media affects us too. If it's other titles that aren't necessarily respected or trusted, that doesn't help us. I think it's really important that we protect, media as we're certainly not doing news journalism, but I think this idea of the fourth estate, it's not a nice to have. It's essential to functioning society, and we are, in our own way, a small part of that.
And I'm sorry. I do just want to, I know I said indie publication, but that makes it sound a bit like a photocopied zine. I think what I was more referring to is the idea of an independent publisher that, it takes a lot to do this and to maintain it. And I guess when I say robust ecosystem, I mean that, like, it props that up, that it allows us to be sort of to stand out on a newsstand and to continue doing what we're doing at the scale that we do it, right? To do a slow publication twice a year and all of these other verticals and sort of arms of the brand that we can is, it all kind of just is part of that soup that makes it work so well.
It's a beautiful message. I love it. Continue on doing what you're doing. So we are recording this sometime in January. If my calculations don't, I think we're going to publish this beginning of February. Yes. That's a month before the issue number 40. Can you give us a sneak peek 1 month before of what's going to happen in that issue?
I don't know. Can we? I don't think we've ever let slip what we put into it before.
We can a broad overview, sure. I think.
Okay.
But you really are testing my memory.
Yeah.
So, traditionally we time our issues to come out at the key moments in the first half of the year and the second half of the year. So the March issue is out in time for Hong Kong Art Week.
Art Week, yes.
Then, Milan Design Week, 3 days of design in Copenhagen, and everything that sort of happens in this time of year. And then the August-September issue is for art weeks and design and calendar events in Indonesia, Japan, Singapore, Taiwan, also BODW and Design Month in December here in Hong Kong. So those are kind of the two halves of the year. And so we kind of think also of our audiences, and we, the brands that we work with, they're interested in those visible moments. Okay, having said that, the March issue we've got spaces and architectural projects in Australia. We have quite an interesting take on a community cemetery concept. We have profiles from Japan on a historical craft studio. We have a Korean ceramicist. We have a sort of overview of the art landscape in Pakistan. Oh, wow. We have a sort of the introduction of a new concept we're calling the City, which is a sort of design-led city guide, a kind of pithy 3 or 4 places to stay and eat and sleep and shop, which we think is a nice addition. We also have homes across the region. As always, we have some sort of musings in the flaneur section from Chiang Mai. This issue, I'm definitely missing
Very
one.
impressive.
Hey, I'm missing a couple of things. We're looking at Sydney's new metro system that they've unveiled sort of throughout 2024 towards the end of 2024, which is a series of new subways that have been designed by quite noteworthy architectural firms as incredible examples of placemaking and of sort of an exemplar of mobility in cities. There's definitely some other things I'm missing, but you'll have to just get the issue to find out the rest.
I will get the issue, and I hope everyone gets it. But I'm already very eager for March to arrive. March is going to be a very important month. I'm going to start a new job that I'm not going to tell anyone there. But maybe
we wish you
later.
all the best. You'll have to tell us the
gossip.
I'll
be in Milan, so I hope you guys. I'll tell you, and I hope you guys come to check the showroom. And I can only tell you that I had a very nice time talking to you guys.
Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm very happy because I know that this is going to be continued for another 10 years at least.
And thank you for such thoughtful questions.
Yeah.
You really sparked some new thoughts.
Look, you are too kind. Actually, let me tell you something. This week is a terrible week. I was very stressed, very busy, so I'm very happy that my brain was able to maintain a conversation.
Likewise.
You were
for us.
you are very interesting and eloquent guests. Otherwise, if you were shy guests, this would have been a disaster. But instead, it was an amazing episode. David, do you approve? I always seek for his approval. It's very important. Because he sees it from a different angle. Simone, Jeremy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for everyone else watching out there, this is published. Today is not Friday. Let me tell you this, but this is going to be published on a Friday at 5 p.m. So have a nice weekend. Be happy. Enjoy.
Thank you for your time.
If you need a quiet weekend, read the magazine.
Thank you so much.
Much love. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for
guys.
having
you.
us.
All right.
Do you ever have like a bit of